depression. And unfortunately, I have used Dave's services over the years with a sister, a friend, and many other people. So what Dave and Jan do is absolutely amazing for people all over the country. And I know that it has helped me, it has helped my family, the people that I've been close to. And I think this is just a wonderful organization. And how long have you been doing this, Dave? 26 years and going strong. Special Spaces is an organization in Naperville, and as you can see, they're changing children's lives one bedroom at a time. What they do is young children that with life-threatening illnesses, they will create a dream bedroom for these kids. Whether it's a Cubs theme. Here's a few that you can see here of what they do. But they do an amazing job with young kids, trying to make their lives just a little bit nicer, a little bit more bearable. And I thank the Special Spaces. Kelly Knox is here somewhere. I don't know. The Marie Wilkinson Food Pantry. They have grown so much. 7 years ago, they had a small little pantry on the west side of Aurora on Highland Avenue and served 80 families. And they have grown to serving close to 500 families a week. They have they grew their pantry on the west side. They opened one up on the east side. They recently moved into East Aurora High School with their pantry, and just last week, with thanks to Kathy Farrell, who's sitting over here, now they serve the students at East Aurora, and for the first time last week. I believe they had 104 students use their services, came through their line last week, and they expect many more next week for that. So I would like to thank the Marie Wilkinson Food Pantry for what they do for this community. It's amazing. The Aurora Neighborhood Baseball League. This is something that over the years we have supported. It is near and dear to my heart because they play on the fields in Aurora. Back then it was Farnsworth Park. I believe that they changed the name to the MLK Park, Copley 2. And there's some people in here, I think Chuck Nelson and Dan Platt and Scott Wise, I think we all played on those fields when we were kids. And since that time, they had to close those fields because of the gang activity. And then they started back in the early 90s, they said, we're going to take the Urban Youth Ministry, the Wayside Cross, decided that, we're going to take these fields back. Those are ours for our kids. And they have been going strong, with the help of Robin Sturkle, who is right over here. And I know that we have some coaches that coach those kids sitting over to my right. I know Brian and Kathy Dolan over here coached some of those teams. But it's an amazing organization. Those kids are playing on those fields, no worries. And, that's kind of what we do is baseball stuff. And to give back to a little league like that is very special for us. It's an honor for us to do that. It's certainly a pleasure to help do that. So thank you guys for all that you do. And right now, I would like to, at this time, we are going to introduce our first speaker, and that would be a gentleman who graduated from Neuqua Valley in 2013. He played with Danny and Jonathan over there, And that team, David Gerber helped that team to a 4th place finish in the state. David had a really good year as a junior, as a senior. Went on to pitch at Creighton. After his senior year at Creighton, he received that call that all of us wish we received at one point, and that is the Seattle Mariners saying, David, we have selected you in the Major League Baseball draft, first-year player draft, and David now belongs to the Seattle Mariners. Ready, David? We'll wait just 1 minute so we can drop this curtain. You can see David. He's much prettier than I am.
Makes it a little bit more nerve-wracking. I got like all 400 of you in my picture now. Yeah, I'm so excited and honored to be able to come here and speak today. This is an event that my family always looked forward to when I was at Neuqua Valley, and all the parents did. It was a really great time for us all to come together and help out the community with what we had, with our privilege. So I'm very lucky to be here today. Like Coach said, for those who don't know me, my name is Dave Gerber, and I'm now with the Mariners organization. Many of you might know my brother was to speak here tonight, but unfortunately he wasn't able to make it. Recently, Mike has been added to the 40-man roster for the Detroit Tigers. Yeah. So it's a really exciting time for us, and my brother and I are incredibly close, and so he's doing Fan Fest right now, and right, he's getting to the light at the end of the tunnel. So unfortunately he couldn't make it. I know he wanted to be here, but though my brother can hit a baseball much further than I can, I'm a bit of a better public speaker, so I think I'm doing you guys a little bit of a service. So, but no, I'm here. I want to share a little bit about my story and my path, and I'm incredibly excited to do it, and hopefully I can hit a lesson or two across to some of the young students and student athletes in here about it. So, Neuqua was where it all began for me. And it's kind of where it all begins for all of us. You think, high school is kind of the beginning of us, getting to our adult life. But it was after one of the most difficult, crazy, depressing times in my life. In November of 2008, my father was diagnosed with renal cell carcinoma, which is a fancy way to say kidney cancer. And it flipped our world upside down. And it was out of nowhere, and we caught it late. We caught it stage 4. Quickly the cancer had spread to his lungs and to his brain, and unfortunately, in May of 2009, right before I started high school, my father passed away and lost the battle. And like I said, this was a crazy time. And it's during a time where, as a young individual, you can take a ton of pads. But I can't thank the Neuqua community enough, okay? The parents from our teams, my teammates, the players, the community, and the administrators played such a big role in helping us out. I mean, meals, everything. You name it, someone was at our place helping us out during that hard time. And I want to take a second to thank 2 individuals personally. I want to thank Coach Renner and Coach Fumagalli, and all the other coaches too. But these 2 guys, players in here, when you see Coach Renner, you see your head coach, maybe a teacher, and you see Coach Fumo, you see a man with a very deep voice that's a little bit scary at times, but a great coach. When I see these 2 individuals, guys, I see 2 guys that were with my father during his dying days. And I don't mean that they were there from 9 in the morning to 10 in the morning and would leave. Coach Renner and Coach Fumo would come in the morning at 8, and we'd have to force them out of there at 6 at night, every day. All right, and what are these two guys doing? They're talking baseball with my father. My father loved his family, and then baseball was like a very close second. All right, and they're telling stories, and I get to sit and listen to this, and my dad is, hooked up to everything known to man, and I get to listen to him laugh, and he loves those moments, and those were his last moments, but they were good ones. And so I can't thank these two guys enough for what they did during that time, because now looking back and reflecting as I've gotten older, they didn't need to do that. They went out of their way, and they were making sure that that's how they really helped out, and I can't thank those two enough. If you guys could please, round of applause. It was unbelievable. And so I dive into my freshman year of college high school, after all of this happens. And my brother's a senior at the time, playing on the varsity team. And I'm a freshman, and I didn't have the best perspective. My grades were a mess. I was giving my mom a lot of headaches. And I was lucky enough to make the team as a freshman, and we get a week out of season, and Coach Renner walks over to the freshman field with my grades. And so here comes the varsity coach, and we're all like, oh God, what's happening? All the guys are paying attention. He pulls me aside, so everybody's like, what is going on? And he brings me my grade report. And I'm not gonna lie, guys, I was barely eligible. I had like a 2.0, it was terrible. And he pulls me aside, he says, Dave, he said, do you realize what you're doing? He kind of ripped me a little bit, but he said, do you realize what you're doing? That what's going on here, you might not think is affecting you, but it really is, and it's affecting people around you. And I was 14 years old, and it quickly hit me. Okay, I gotta grow up a little bit. My actions are, making it hard on my mom and my family, and this is really making it more difficult. And so the coaches were there to help me grow a little bit more every year and every year. And so we finish our freshman year, go into our sophomore season with Coach Kleinhans at the time, and it was a blast. And then we get to our junior year with a good team, and I saw Nick Blackburn in here somewhere, so yeah, there he is. We'll have to talk a little bit later. But we had a fun year that year, an awesome year. We went down to Memphis and had a great trip. I had a good year, and I was lucky enough that summer after my junior year to sign with Creighton University, follow my brother's footsteps where he went as well. And so I go into my senior year, and we have quite a ride. We have a pretty good run. I made some of my best memories in baseball my senior year of high school with that team. We made a run in the state tournament. And when we got to the state tournament, my family was traveling from out east to come visit and watch. It was the regional tournament. And then my little cousin, who was 6 years old at the time, who idolizes my brother right now, especially, but is like, hey, I really want to be the bat boy. So I go up to Coach Renner and I say, Coach, can my little cousin be the bat boy? He jumps all over it. He's like, absolutely. So we get into the regional championship. My little 6-year-old cousin's running around grabbing bats, this and that, and we're in this tight game. It's 4-3, and Danny McCursky is pitching a gem, and my little cousin, it's like the 5th inning. It's a close game. My little cousin tugs on Coach Renner's jersey. Coach Renner, what's going on? He goes, hey, you got to put Dave in. 6-year-old kid. You gotta put Dave in. And he looks at him, and you guys want to know the crazy thing? He put me in the next day. He took the advice from my little 6-year-old cousin. And we won, so it worked out. And we won the regional championship. We went to the sectional championship where it was at Neuqua Valley, and we dogpiled on our home field. That's the last game we played at our home field. We go to a super sectional, and John Vilk throws great. We win. And then we got a chance in the state championship, and it was a blast. You know, not a lot of teams are lucky enough to get there, and everything worked for us. We got hot at the right time. So my senior year, my time at Creighton was, Neuqua was phenomenal, and we had such a great time. And so then I dive into this new challenge, okay? Now I dive into college, and I get there, and I quickly realized that, oh man, I am not ready for this, okay? And I was excited to be with the team, but if I could go back into high school and do one thing, I would have gotten in the weight room. I would have been in a little better condition. I really didn't focus on that as much as I needed to, and so quickly I realized, okay, I'm not ready for this right now. And I knew this because I'd go into practice and the game speed was way too fast. I knew this because I would go to the weight room and I wouldn't be able to get out of my bed the next day because I was so sore. And I knew I wasn't in good enough condition because I saw more breakfast leave me than I thought I consumed before conditioning, all the time. And so I was quickly thrown on my heels. And though I was playing with my brother, who was a senior, and that was a great experience, it was a very difficult year for me because if there were 15 pitchers on that team, I was the 15th guy, without a doubt. So I go through my freshman year. I earned an opportunity to pitch. Didn't throw very well. I hit my first pitch in college. I hit the batter square in the back. and I finish a tough year, and I walk into my coach's office for my exit meeting, and he says, "Dave, I'm not sure you're good enough to play here." And it was like a kick in the chest. And he says, "But listen, we want you to try to throw submarine, and we're going to let you go to summer ball. Every summer in college, you go out to summer ball." And he says, "We're going to let you try to learn it this summer and come back, and if it works, great, and if not, you should probably find a new place and try to go play somewhere else." And my back was against the wall now, and I had a choice where I could leave and say, "This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I've been thrown over the top my whole life, submarine, this is crazy." But I had made a commitment to Creighton, and I felt that this was a chance for me to separate myself. And so my back was against the wall, and I learned quickly that I needed to earn every opportunity I could get, and this was my chance. So I go into that summer, and I'm working out every morning, and I put 20 pounds on, and I'm watching YouTube videos of anybody who's ever thrown submarine, ever, taking notes and charting, and I'm pretty sure I still have all this at the house up in Rhode Island, and just like doing anything I could. I'd never put all my marbles in a basket like this. I went after this. And my goal was to be the closer when I was a senior. That was my goal. I was going into my sophomore year. That's the end goal. And so I go back to fall ball. Coach was okay with it. You know, he still had his doubts. I wasn't throwing very hard, but I learned that I had to hit my spot. So I figured out what I had to do to be successful at the time. And we go through fall. I go through winter. I'm ready this time. All right, I've worked my tail off. And we get up to season, and I walk up right before the first game, and my name's not on the travel list. Okay? And it kills me. Right? I mean, all my friends leave, and I'm staying at campus. So I said, okay, just got to work a little bit harder. And so I would go in late at night to one of our facilities and do some conditioning, or do this, or do that. And then the next week we come up, and I go to the board again, and not on the travel list. And I've been busting my tail, and I've been working as hard as I could for an opportunity. I was going out every day during practice. I was sprinting around. I didn't want to get there or finish and not know that I didn't do enough. So I was doing everything I could. The third week, Coach comes back, and I knock on his door in the office. He's probably thinking I'm about to cash my check in. And I walk in and I say, "Coach, listen, I know you might doubt a little bit, but please give me an opportunity. You know, do you think I've been working hard enough to get this chance? Is it possible?" He said, "You know what? You've been working really hard. I've seen that. I'll give you an opportunity. If something opens up, I'll let you get on the travel roster and we'll see, what you can do. And that, like a day later, one of our bullpen guys gets hurt. And luckily for me, my name's on the travel roster that week. So we go down to Tulane. It was the first flight I'd ever been on for college baseball. I was so excited. But I was on a mission because this is my chance, right? This is my opportunity. You earn an opportunity, and if you do well with it, you get to keep earning opportunities. But if you don't, you lost your chance. And Friday night, we're down 9-0. I had never thrown submarine in a Division I college game, and coach calls my name and says, "All right, we're down 9-0. Dave, go eat the pitcher." Don't want to waste my good pitchers. And he throws me out there, and I go out there and I strike out 2 guys, and I get the next guy to ground out. And I earned another opportunity. And a week later, we're playing Minnesota, and I do well again. I get another opportunity again, and again. And before you know it, I've got 5 opportunities under my belt where I had done well. And I had worked really hard. I had confidence in my preparation. And the 6th outing, our closer had been really struggling. And so I go in for this is a month and a half in the season, to go in for my first save. Okay, now I literally went from being the 15th guy, and I still have the mentality of being the 15th guy. But I went from being the 15th guy to getting an opportunity to be the #1 guy out of the bullpen. And I went out and I got the save, and I walked in and I said, "Man, you worked your tail off, you finally got this. Don't feel entitled because of this. You got to keep earning these opportunities, because the second that I stopped working would be the second that I would never get a chance to keep this job." Right? And I was lucky to even have the opportunity to do it. I got it, and I was able to make the most of it. And so the rest of my sophomore year, I closed. My junior year, I continued to have that mindset of being the 15th guy. The 15th guy. Gotta keep that mindset. And I closed my junior year. My senior year, same mindset. And I closed again that year. And for me, it was really cool when I had left Creighton, going from being the last guy there. I walked out of Creighton with the Creighton saves record with 25 saves, and I walked out of Creighton with the lowest ERA in Creighton history with a 1.95. Thank you. And, to be 100% honest, those numbers, I didn't work hard because I wanted to break all these records. I worked hard because I wanted to be a part of the team. I wanted to be a part of something bigger than myself, And I got an opportunity to do that. And what I'm most lucky about with Creighton and with Nequa was that I was lucky enough to face some hard adversity, right? And it's hard now. You face adversity and sometimes you want to turn your back to it. But to be able to look it in the eye and go after it was what I was lucky enough to learn. And that's not always the easy route, but I was able to do it. And so for the young students and student athletes in here, I do want to say this. Everybody focuses on talent. Everybody talks about talent. You know what? Talent can only get you so far. What you guys need to focus on is building character, okay? High character guys are the most successful guys. And that's not just in sports, that's in anything you're going to do later on in your life. Build character. How do you do that? Face adversity when it strikes. Get up and go work out when nobody's looking. Go do that stuff. When you study as hard as you can for a test, over-prepare, and it doesn't go your way, go to a teacher and figure out what you did wrong. You're building adversity, or you're building character. So build character, and you'll be extremely successful in it. That's the key. So I'm incredibly lucky to have had the opportunity to join the Mariners organization and give this thing a shot, give it everything I've got, and try to make this a big thing. And I'm so incredibly blessed to have been here today and spoke. And I know Dave, I got to meet Dave Dravecki these past couple days. And what an unbelievable human being this guy is. And I've been taking a bunch of mental notes because I'm getting to have lunch every now and then with one of the best, all right? With a guy who's faced some hard stuff and has pushed through. I've been taking so many notes. So, I'm incredibly excited to hear you speak today. And I just want to thank everybody again for letting me come here and share a little bit about my story and what a wonderful job everybody has done to put this event together. And thank you very much for letting me speak today.
Boy, am I glad. I love your brother, but I'm glad he made the 40-man. That was pretty good. Thank you so much. But at this point, before I bring up our next speaker, I would like to say a few things. This gentleman who you are about to listen to has been here before. And the reason he's back is because of the same thing that David Gerber had to say. He's one of the finest men I've ever met in my life. And he knows exactly what we're trying to do and why we do it. And he is all in to help us. And please accept my apology for saying what I'm about to say if it's inappropriate. But this gentleman, when I called him to see if he would come and do this event, he said, I've been there before. It's an amazing event. What you do with the money is amazing. He said, I want to come and do this for nothing. And I am very fortunate at this time now to call him a friend. He's, like I said, he's been here a few times. He's been to our church. He's been here. He's been to a UIM event, and he's the best there ever was. Before he comes up here, I want to show a video and tells a little bit of his story. I'm going to see if I can press play correctly.
Dave Dravecki, the famous pitcher for the San Francisco Giants, a 21st round draft pick who fought his way up the ranks to national stardom.
Growing up, I had two heroes, Sandy Koufax and Vida Blue. They were left-handed pitchers. All I cared about as a little kid was I wanted to throw a baseball like they did.
I would have to say he was a tremendous competitor. He had this tremendous desire to win.
Some people are born with just gobs of talent, but they only use about this much. And with David had this much, and Dave used it to the full extent.
At the zenith of his amazing Major League odyssey, Dave's doctors noticed a strange lump forming.
Finally, they said, okay, let's just get it checked. And so we went to the doctor and had an MRI.
We were in the waiting room waiting for the doctors to come back and talk to us. And outside of the room, we heard the doctors fooling around with the film, slapping it up on the thing, and then all of a sudden, the doctor said, oh my goodness, look at that tumor.
It was cancer in his left arm, his pitching arm.
And so the doctors came in and told him they believed he had a fibroid tumor at the base of his deltoid muscle. They would have to remove it, along with 50% of his deltoid muscle.
The doctors said Dave Dravecki would never pitch again. But 10 months after the removal of cancer from his arm...
You don't ever use the word finish when you talk about Dave Dravecki, because he's never finished.
He stood on the mound in Candlestick Park on August 10th, 1989, and he stood there in amazement.
The magnitude of that night is unreal. It was like more like a World Series game, the 7th game of the World Series. And he got a stand ovation when he walked down by the bullpen. When he first started warming up, he got a stand ovation when he finished. He got a stand ovation when he went to the mound. It was just incredible to sit there. I didn't really manage that game. I just sat there in awe.
Dave returned to the mound to pitch 8 electrifying innings for the Giants, leading them to victory. But then, 5 days later, on the mound against Montreal, Dave Dravecky threw the pitch heard round the world.
The 6th inning, and I'm back out on the mound, and I rear back to throw a fastball to Tim Raines, who's at the plate. And all of a sudden, as I let go of that pitch, my left arm snaps in half.
Here's the pitch, and Dravecky falls over.
This incredible explosion in my left ear from releasing that fastball and my arm snapping in half. And I went falling to the ground, almost went in shock. There was something going on in my life that was a whole lot bigger than baseball. So much bigger than baseball.
Dravecky stumbled on the mound. He threw a wild pitch. Yankees holding his shoulder.
He was checked by the doctors, and they told him the tumor had returned.
His left arm shattered, along with his dreams of a major league comeback. The man with the miracle arm must now face the future as an amputee.
Baseball was just a stepping stone to something much greater.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce Mr. Dave Dravecky.
It happens everywhere I go. There's something with technology that we just don't like. Is it possible to, can you all see me okay? Yeah. All right, great. Yeah, that's perfect.
You can do that.
You know, it's, when I sit and I think about the fact that, is this my 3rd time or my 2nd time? This is my 3rd time. I'm amazed. I am actually amazed at what you all have been able to accomplish. It says so much about your love and care for these kids. And I hope you don't forget the significance of that as you continue to move forward with this. Every time I've been here, I have met some of the most wonderful people. I have seen how hard you all work to make this happen. And I've seen a coach and his volunteer team pull something off that is very difficult just so that your kids could experience what they experience under his coaching. And I think that's amazing. I also like to come back here because the food ain't so bad. You know, I thought about when I was coming. This is the 3rd time, and I always freak out because, you know, I don't want to just keep telling the same old story. So I'm going to ask, how many people were here the last time I spoke? How many were here the last time I spoke? Okay, there's not very many of you, so guess what? You're getting the story again. I'll bring it up to date and add a few things because there's some stuff that's going on in my life, and you know, to David's point, adversity happens, and it's what you do with adversity. And I have to tell you, there are some wonderful things and some powerful things that David said tonight that I resonate with because it was so much of my own story. And tonight, you know, I stand here and there's another chapter of pain and suffering in our life because my wife has just been diagnosed over the last 3 months with thyroid cancer. And so we're now moving forward with that journey. And Fortunately, it's the most common thyroid cancer that you can be diagnosed with, so the prognosis is good. But anytime you hear that word, it throws you into a place of remembering what's happened to you, and then having your spouse and me now being on the outside looking in, and it's my spouse that is going through it, and it makes it so difficult. And yet we are so grateful for so many wonderful people that have come into our life to be a support and encouragement to us. And so tonight I want to spend my time talking about the significance of that in my life. And I hope that as I share these stories with you, that once again, for those of you who have not heard it, I'm going to invite you into my story by thinking about your own personal story. And for those of you who have, join us once again and go on that journey with me. Because every one of us has a story that's being written in life. And it's a significant story. And I hope you all know how significant your stories are. So many of us think, you know, it's just my story and there's nothing special about me and there's nothing special about it. And I'm here to tell you that regardless of whether or not you have the privilege of standing on this platform and telling a story or sitting in at those tables, being able to share your story with the ones you love, your story is significant. You are significant. You are not ordinary. You're extraordinary. And you cannot forget the power of that in your life, because then what happens is it ends up translating into the lives of people around you. And ladies and gentlemen, we all know that we are living in a culture today that is split. And it is so sad to see the polarization that has taken place in our culture when it doesn't have to be. And yet I'm convinced, because I'm an eternal optimist, that as we take a look at my story and our stories, that we in fact can make a difference in this culture. We just have to be willing to step in and engage. And as Robin said, to be all in. To be all in. Because at the end of the day, as you and I sit here, you look at the young men and women that are here, that are in high school. And they're the ones, through your stories, that are going to be impacted and influenced to be able to go out there and share their stories. And they're the ones that are going to be the influencers. They're the ones that are going to be the change makers out there. And so we want them to understand the significance of what a life is supposed to look like as you do that. And it's not easy. For you young men who are sitting at that table and you're on this baseball team, adversity is a part of life. And it's how you face that adversity that will ultimately determine the kind of character that David was talking about that you will embrace. Because you know as well as anybody does in your culture with the pressure that you have, and we as parents know that we got choices, and we can go one way or the other. And what do we want for our children? What do we want for these young men? What do we want for our young men and women? But to make the right choices, to go down the right path as they live life. And when they fail, what they need most from us is not us trying to fix it, but to love them to the place where they get back on the right track. And that's the story every one of us is living. And so I brought my prop again. It's a baseball card. And over the next few moments, we're going to take this journey together. Now, I'm sorry, but I'm in my orange and black. And it's just the way it is. Because I'm a giant. As a matter of fact, I talked to my boss and I told him, when I die and I get cremated, I want my ashes to be sprinkled on the pitcher's mound at AT&T Park. And he said, Dave, I can't promise the pitcher's mound, but I'll do it somewhere on the ball field. And so when I look at this card, I'm reminded of something that I had the privilege of doing. David and I were talking about this, and it was so refreshing to be around a young man that actually gets this. We were talking about the fact that this is a privilege that we get. It's a game that we play. Baseball's not a job. It's not like the jobs that you have. It's a fantasy world that we get to live in for as long as we can with the talent that God's given us. And so maximize it, enjoy it, but never see it as a right. See it as a privilege, because that's exactly what it is. When I look at you guys over there at the table, I see talented athletes. How many guys would like to be in your shoes? But they can't, because they can't play at the level that you're at. And when you go to the next level in college, it's no different. It's another step in the privilege that you get to play at the next level. And then when you get the chance to be drafted like this young man, regardless of whether or not it's the first round or the 29th round, and by the way, I was a 21st rounder, it's the next level of that wonderful privilege that we get to play this incredible game. So this game means a lot to me. But there's so much more to me than just being a baseball player. And there's so much more to all of you than just what you do in life. You know, we're husbands, we're fathers, we're wives, we're moms. And for some of us, we get the unique privilege of being grandparents. I'm a grandpa. Man, that's the best thing in the universe. Now I know why I never killed my kids. I love being a grandpa. It's been awesome. You grandpas out there shaking your heads, you know what I'm talking about. And as I look at this card, though, I'm reminded that in this person, Dave Dravecky, the man, Dave Dravecky, the husband, the father, the grandfather, and the friend, there are some things about my life that you need to understand that have helped me to get to a place where I now know more than I have in the past 61 years of my life, what it means when I talk about defining my true worth. Because you see, our culture pressures us into trying to think that our worth is in the stuff that we have or what we don't have. Because there are people out there that feel worthless as much as they feel worth a lot. And the reality is that that's not all that I am, based on the things that I have and I possess. There's so much more to me than that. And so when I look at this card, in order for you to understand how Dave has discovered and began to live in this idea of understanding his worth, you have to know certain things about me and my story. You need to know the good, the bad, and the ugly, because that's who I am. That's my story. It revolves around some really good things that have happened, some really bad things that have happened, and some really ugly things about me. And you know what, folks? The one thing that I'm grateful for here tonight is knowing that as I look into this audience, I am not alone. Because that's every story in this room. There is good, there is bad, and there is ugly. So go along with me in this journey as we talk about all three and think about those places in your life. I grew up with a dream. I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player, and I got to tell you, so many good things happened along the way. I remember being in high school. It was my senior year. I was thinking, man, I can go back and I can remember being those guys. As a matter of fact, you with the long hair, yeah, man, that was me, baby. And I love the look. Don't lose the look. It is so cool. I love it. But I remember when I was a senior in high school, and I had finished my year, and it was good. And my coach came up to me afterwards and he said, Dave, I actually think you have the ability to play at the next level. And I thought, man, that's awesome. But how do you do it? Because you see, there wasn't one university or college in the entire country that recruited me to play baseball for them. Not one. And so what do? How do you get to the next level? And all I knew was that I lived in Youngstown, Ohio, and Youngstown State University was 20 minutes away from home. And so I figured I'd go and I'd walk on at Youngstown State University and I'd play for that baseball powerhouse, the YSU Penguins. Yeah, man, we froze our butts off just like you do here. And so all of a sudden I found myself at Youngstown State, and I had the 4 most incredible years at YSU. Now, all of it revolved around exercise and baseball, because quite frankly, I was not a student athlete. I was an athlete. And I would highly recommend that you wouldn't hear this part of my story, young men and women, because I found out way too late that I needed to focus in on getting a good education at the college level. But those 4 years were awesome at Hardee's, I just have to say. That's where I lived in the student hall, man. Some of you are laughing because you were there too. And sure enough, after 4 years, the phone rings in June of 1978 in the summer draft. And the second day of the draft, the Pittsburgh Pirates are calling me to tell me that I have just been selected in the 21st round. And I was so excited. Life was so good for Dave Dravecky. Kid living his dream, and now he's going to get paid to play this little boys game. By the way, you know what kind of bonus money they offer you in the 21st round? I got nothing. A contract for $500 a month, and they did ask if I wanted a cup of coffee. I was so excited, I didn't care. All I wanted to do was sign on the bottom line so that I could have my chance to show them that I could play at the next level. That was my dream. And now I had the chance to try and get to the big leagues. Next 3 years, I found myself in the Pirate organization, and it was amazing. We had the most wonderful time in the minor leagues. You'll discover this, David, really quick if you already haven't. But in the minor leagues, when you have absolutely nothing, you would think that people would be around to give you stuff, like Nike and Wilson and those kind of guys. And unfortunately, that only happens when you get to the big leagues and you got all the money to pay for it. And now they're starting to give you stuff for free. When you're in the minor leagues, you got to pay for it yourself. At least I had to when I was playing back then. And so we enjoyed so much this journey, my wife and I, because all of a sudden, we're now on this trek for 3 years, and we're developing these wonderful relationships with teammates and the other wives, and we're realizing the power of community and fellowship and relationship was so important for us to actually enjoy this experience. Because we would have potluck nights. And instead of having just one meal that my wife would make, which usually was just boiling some hot dogs, you might get Kraft macaroni and cheese. And back then, I think it was $1.39. We would have a salad. Somebody would bring another vegetable. Somebody might actually bring some hamburgers to go with those hot dogs. And now we had a feast. And so what we learned to do when we had nothing was to come together and share what we had. And it was so powerful. When I think back on that, it was so powerful. All of a sudden, 1981, I'm working out with the AAA team in spring training. A group of us are sitting around, and there's about a week left in camp, and one of the kids said, hey, if you never got to the big leagues with the Pittsburgh Pirates, where would you want to play? Now for me, I didn't even like thinking about that because Pittsburgh's only an hour and 15 minutes from Youngstown, Ohio. So to make it to the big leagues with Pittsburgh and be that close to home would have been wonderful. But the question was asked, so we wanted to hear what the answer was. And this kid said, well, I heard that if you never got to the big leagues with the Pittsburgh Pirates, the best place to go would be the San Diego Padres. We all thought to ourselves, why the Padres? And we looked at him and said, well, why them? And he said, well, the guy told me that if you never got to the big leagues with the Padres, at least their AAA team was in Hawaii. So we all thought, man, that'd be a great gig. Now get this, here's a kid from Youngstown who's loving life. He's playing a kid's game and he's getting paid. And now all of a sudden you throw in the possibility of Hawaii, and he's over the top. It's like going into the jungle gym thing, and your kid's eyeballs just go this big, and it's like, where do I go first? And so all of a sudden, we kind of calmed down from that conversation, and we moved back into the swing of training, and there's only a few days left now. And all of a sudden, I finished up my practice, I've showered, I'm in the clubhouse, ready to go to the apartment, And all of a sudden, the farm director walks in, and he calls my name. And when the boss of all the minor league ball players calls your name, it's not a good thing at the end of spring training. He walked up to me, and I was scared to death because I didn't want to lose my job. I wasn't done with my dream yet. And so I didn't want my pink slip. And I didn't want to get traded because obviously I'm in Pittsburgh, man, and I'm only an hour and 15 minutes from Youngstown. And as he came and approached me, he looked at me square in the eyes and he said, "Dave, we've traded you." And I was so disappointed. Because all I was thinking about is now I'm not going to get my chance to be close to home and play for the Pirates. Guys, I can't tell you how hard it was to hold back a smile when this guy looked at me and said, "We've traded you to the San Diego Padres." And I'm thinking to myself, Hawaii, here I come. And with that, he looks at me and he says, "The Padres are shipping you off to Amarillo, Texas." And I thought to myself, where on God's earth is Amarillo? I found out it was in the Panhandle, and I didn't even know what that was. So you can only imagine. That was from college, not going to those classes where you learn about all that stuff. But lo and behold, off I go to Amarillo, Texas. And you know, as I look at this card, the coolest thing about going to Amarillo, as hard as it was to be traded from a team that I really wanted to be with, I was given a fresh start. I was going to a young organization. They were looking for talent. They were trying to find the right guys that could compete at the major league level for the San Diego Padres. And now I was given a second chance. I started off the season. I wanted to show them that I was the next Sandy Koufax or Vita Blue, because for obvious reasons in getting the Sandy Koufax deal tonight, he was one of my guys. He and Vita were the two guys that I just loved. And so I'm thinking, man, I want to show them I'm one of those guys. And I started off 1-4. And you talk about feeling bad, like you're not making your mark. And yet, you know what? I appreciate it so much, David, saying this. You keep grinding. You don't give up on yourself. You stay with it. And you know, I had a really, really good coach. Now I want you guys to hear this, because there are a lot of coaches in this room tonight, not just this one in front of me, along with his coaching staff, which, by the way, he has more coaches than I had when I was playing in the minor leagues. And I was playing pro ball. That's pretty impressive, by the way, Robin. I don't know how much you pay him, but that's pretty good.
Twice as much as you're getting tonight.
Yeah, that's good. And so I had this manager. His name was Eddie Watt. I don't know if any of you are big baseball fans and you know that name, but Eddie was a relief pitcher for the Baltimore Orioles. And now he was retired, and he was working with us young kids. He was the AA manager for the Gold Sox, the Amarillo Gold Sox, the San Diego Padre AA affiliate. And he took an investment, made an investment in 25 guys. And that investment was to give everything he knew about baseball to us so that we could become better. And I was overwhelmed by the investment he made in me to help me go from being a thrower to a pitcher. And Eddie Watts spent that summer teaching me the art of pitching. And it's really interesting because in these days, with statistical analysis, say that 10 times, by the way, really fast. With a statistical analysis, we have complicated so much this game that we have removed some of the simplicity of understanding how you play the game. Because as a pitcher, what's the most important thing you're to do? Throw strikes. When you're facing a hitter, it's important to get him out in as few pitches as possible. When I watch a baseball game today and we're in the 5th inning, I cringe when I see the pitch count of these kids that are starters. I cringe. How can you have a 95 pitch count in the 5th inning? I'd have 90 to 95 pitch count in the 8th and the 9th inning. And that's what Eddie taught me. And he invested in us. He loved us well. He was the guy, along with his wife, Betty. So Eddie and Betty would get the wives and the players together when we were at home. And he would always call us over to his apartment, and we would have potluck. So it continued. And it was so powerful to see a coach that cared so much about you, not only just on the field, but off the field. I'll never forget Eddie Watt. You know what's amazing as I sit here tonight? You guys have a coach like that. You've got kids that come back. That's powerful. What does that say about this man and his team, his staff, all of you? Guys, that's what's so special. It's not what happened with me when I was on the baseball field between the lines. It was the love that he showed for me, not just out there, but when I was in the apartment and I was away from the ball game. And how much he cared for me. And needless to say, that just poured more of this love for the game into my heart. I wanted to play for him, and so you know what ended up happening? I ended up 15-5. I was selected the minor league pitcher of the year after going 1-4. But on top of that, as some of you know, the other part of this story in Amarillo is even more important to me, especially as I faced cancer. Because it was in the summer that a dear friend of mine and my roommate, Byron Ballard, had challenged me to get to know God. And through that challenge, I started reading the Bible to discover who I was in relationship to Him. And it was that summer that I came face to face, I ran into the love that God has for me through His Son, Jesus. And I was overwhelmed by that love. I want to say something here that I've never said before. I'm going to take a bold step out of my comfort zone. And the reason why is because I think there's a lot of confusion in our culture about Christianity and God. And I think way too much of our culture identifies it with politics. And I want you to know something. The God that I believe in and the Jesus that I follow does not think about politics. It's not a political issue. It's an issue of the heart, and it's an issue of understanding how much we are loved. Because everyone in this room and in this country and in this world has been created in the image of God. And what I struggle with is how we have denigrated Him to a place where the only way we can think about Him is whether or not we're left or right. And that is so wrong. Because the God I worship loves me on my worst day. And that's what every one of us needs to know. And that's the God that I have chosen to follow. And I just hope as you walk away from here, if there's anything that you have thought about tonight that you've realized, maybe something for the first time that you can start to put your heart and head around in understanding how much you're loved by the one who's created this place we call home. That summer, needless to say, was absolutely incredible. 1982, it's June 8th, and the phone rings again, and guess where I'm at when that phone rings? Hawaii. And my wife and I are, well, I take that back. I'm loving life. It was the last 6 weeks of her pregnancy. And so she wasn't a very happy camper with 95 degrees and 95% humidity. However, the phone rings, and it's Bob Cluck, the farm director for the Padres this time. And he's telling me that we are so happy, Dave, for the birth of your child, Tiffany. I had told him we had a daughter, Tiffany, and they were congratulating us, and they were really excited about it. And I thought, oh my gosh, these guys care more than just about baseball. But almost in the same breath, he goes, Dave, you're going to the big leagues. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's the prayer I'm going to pray for you, that you get that call, and you get to go up and face your brother and strike his butt out. And make it that dinky sinky on the outside part of the plate, baby. So all of a sudden, that's what I call my sinker, the dinky sinky. So all of a sudden, I'm in the big leagues. Life is so good. 1983, I'm in an All-Star game. 1984, I go to the World Series against the Detroit Tigers. They beat the tar out of us. But you know what I learned? The losers get a really nice ring too. And I actually have 2 of them that I'm really proud of. 1987, I get traded from a last place team in the Padres to the first place San Francisco Giants. By the way, 1984, who did we beat to get to the World Series? Now wait a minute, I was going to do this early on, but I want to do it now because let me ride this out, please. Because there's somebody here who's going to ream me with a Chicago Cub ring. He's already done it. But one of the things that I remembered vividly was beating the Cubs to go to the '84 World Series. And I felt so bad when I came the first time and told that story, and you were all like, oh, please, do you have to say that? And then I remember 1989, I was with the Giants. And who beat the Cubs to get to the World Series that year? And I was like, yeah. And when I told you guys, you were like, eh. But now, I can't say that anymore. Because you guys have won a World Series. Yeah. I want you all to know that I was cheering for the Cubs. Just so you know, I was cheering for the Cubs. I really was. We were texting. He was so nervous. He was, you know, he is like this eternal pessimist when it comes to the Cubs. They're not going to do it, Dave. They're not going to do it. Be patient. There's a 7-game series. They're going to do it. And sure enough, what happened, Robin? You got it, man. Now we can all live in peace. It's the Indians' turn. Okay? It's the Indians' turn. So all of a sudden, 1988 rolls around, and I'm pitching on opening day for the San Francisco Giants against the Los Angeles Dodgers, and it's Dave Dravecky versus Fernando Valenzuela. That day we won 5-1, and I thought it was going to be my year. But by the end of 1988, there was a small lump that developed in my left arm on the outside, and it grew to half the size of a golf ball. And all of a sudden, I was sitting in an examining room. I was waiting for the doctors to give us the information that they had just seen on the MRI. My wife and I were sitting there and we were talking, and all of a sudden we got quiet because we heard the doctors walk up the hallway and start flipping the films under the lights to confirm before they came in exactly what we were going to hear and what they needed to tell us. And all of a sudden we started hearing them talk about cancer and tumor, and we were shocked. We were absolutely floored because I thought, this doesn't happen to an athlete that's in perfect shape. I was in great shape back then. I was strong. And it was like, this doesn't happen to me. And now all of a sudden I'm hearing it. And it's me. And I looked at Jan before the doctors came into the room, and the only thing I could think of was, we need to pray. And I don't wax eloquently when I pray, folks. I pray very simple prayers, and I actually think God's okay with that because He knows my heart. And my prayer was simply this: God, whatever is going on and what we're about to face, please give us the strength to endure. That's all I ask. Give us the strength to endure. Doctors came in, and in fact, they told us that we had cancer. And I've got to tell you, I went to a totally different place in that moment. It was kind of an out-of-body experience. And all of a sudden, I started thinking about my family. I started thinking about my wife. I started thinking about whether or not I would live or die. I'm 32 years old, and I'm face-to-face with my mortality. And the first thing that came to my mind was, if I die, who's going to marry my wife? And I was like, oh my gosh. And this guy is going to raise my children. And then I thought, will he love my wife and kids as much as I do? But then this thought came to my mind. Will he love my wife and kids more than I do? Because I know who I am. I haven't been the best husband, and I haven't been the best dad. And so I found myself face to face with some really difficult things. Came back down to reality, and the doctor said, outside of a miracle, you'll never pitch again, Dave. You will never pitch again. Folks, I use this card for a reason. Because 10 months later, this is the picture of me standing on the mound in Candlestick Park on August 10th, 1989. And when the doctor said, outside of a miracle, you'll never pitch again, I was pitching. And I was so grateful for getting another chance. And I was so grateful in looking back for all the amazing people that entered into my story at that point in time and helped me to get where I got. From the nurses and the doctors and the surgeons and the trainers and the physical therapists to my family, my wife, all the support that I got from my friends, I could not have gotten there without them. And so when I stand here and say that God was faithful, He used a lot of people to display His faithfulness to me. And then 5 days later, after defeating the Cincinnati Reds 4-3, you saw what happened on the video. And I want you to know something very important. God was still faithful. Because even when I was laying there on the ground with a broken arm and I knew my career was over, I had the support that I would need to move forward from there to get to the other side. And for that, I was so thankful. So thankful. The cancer kept coming back, and life got worse. I don't know if you've ever found yourself in that situation. I know there are people in this room who understand exactly what I'm talking about. And things got very difficult. There was clinical depression, anxiety, all kinds of things, fear and worry, and wondering if I'm going to get to the other side of this. Finally, there was the amputation, and I thought, man, if I could just get rid of the arm, I could get rid of all my problems. And by the way, with this physical and emotional roller coaster that I was also on a spiritual roller coaster. There were some high days with God, and there were some very low days with God. And there were days when I doubted my faith, and there were days when I doubted God. And it was all a part of Dave Dravecky being human, because that's exactly what we are. We're human. And I'll never forget, 3 weeks after the amputation, we found ourselves going to counseling because my wife was clinically depressed severely. And I was the guy who thought I could just pull my bootstraps up, suck it up, and get through this, but I needed to be there to support her. And it was through the encouragement of others that I went, because I didn't want to go. It was for her, but not for me. And I'll never forget, 3 weeks into that, sitting on the couch and being the guy that was talking instead of her, realizing how depressed I was as a result of the incredible loss. And you know, I just lost an arm. Karen, I'll bet you'd give anything to have Mike sitting next to you instead of George without a left arm. So I can't even begin to understand that pain. And yet it's relative to each and every story that is represented in this room. Because one story is no greater than the others. Because every story is significant and every person is significant. And I came to learn some very important things about my life. But before I got to that place, I had to go to an even darker place, because I now had become a very angry man, and I became verbally abusive to my wife and children. And it was a very, very hard time in my life. I didn't understand what I was going through. I was trying to figure it out. I wanted desperately to fix it, and I couldn't. And in the midst of the anger, taking that out on the people that I love the most, I look back on and it just breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. Because when I found myself at the end of my rope, I had to ask a very important question. If my baseball card now looks like this, does Dave Dravecky still have worth? If our baseball card looks like this, because every one of us has a baseball card in this room, it identifies what you do and who you are. If your card looks like this, do you still have worth? And I'm here to tell you that I discovered a very, very important truth. that every one of us has worth beyond our comprehension, and it has absolutely nothing to do with what we do. It has everything to do with who we are. My story is about who I am. And in discovering who I am as it relates to God, as it relates to my wife, as it relates to my kids, as it relates to my grandkids, as it relates to the friends around me, I have learned that in discovering who I am in those relationships, it has affected everything I have done. Everything. There was a huge gap between the time I discovered this in understanding my worth and where I find myself today. And I want you to know that my journey has not been perfect. I want you to know that it has continued to ebb and flow. But the degree of the slopes are starting to change a little bit. They're not quite as intense, and my stomach doesn't get turned inside out like I'm on that roller coaster again. It's getting a little better. But ladies and gentlemen, do you know why it's getting better? It's getting better because of people like you. It's getting better because of the friends that I have that love me well and that love me in spite of me sometimes. It's getting better because I am celebrating my wife now instead of trying to turn her into something that I thought she should be. How stupid is that? Walking around the house, looking at things that weren't the way I wanted them to be and saying, this is how you need to be. Instead of just celebrating the fact that if you leave cupboard doors open, then you leave them open. Who cares? And if Dave's bent over and a cupboard door is open and he steps up and he busts his head, who cares? That's what Jan does. Get up, wipe your head, close the door. Just celebrate who she is. And you know, I've got to tell you, the more I've learned to celebrate my wife, the closer we have become. Because she's an amazing woman, and I missed out for so many years on this incredible gift that I have been given. And now to be able to celebrate her the way she needs to be celebrated has created this beautiful relationship that I never dreamed we would have. Because I thought we had already been there. My kids, guys, if you're tough and you're hard, don't be afraid to say you're sorry to your kids for messing up in the past. Don't be afraid to say you're sorry when you mess up right now in the present. Because you know what? You don't have all the answers. And your kids learn from you. And so when you do mess up, and you go to them and tell them you're sorry, it changes the dynamic of the relationship. There's something very important that I've learned about parenting, and that's this. I've always thought as a parent that my kids were supposed to trust me because I was the parent. I've learned that it's now my responsibility to earn my child's trust, not expect them to trust me just because of who I am. I have to earn it. And the way you earn it is by celebrating who those kids are. That's how you earn it. And the way you earn it is to show your love in the midst of their making mistakes. Not by judging them and condemning them and criticizing them, but by loving them and showing them the way out of that mistake so that on the other side they've actually learned. And you know what? I want you to know something. If you think that there's no way you can do that now because your children are too old, that's a bunch of baloney, because I've got a 35-year-old and a 32-year-old that I'm doing it with. And I am learning so much by watching them and celebrating who they are. And by the way, as a grandparent, I now get to try it out on them. And it has been so much fun. So that's the journey that I'm on. That's the story that God's writing in my life. But He's writing a similar story in your life too. And the reality is that we only have to be open to what we're being taught. That's all we have to do, is be open to it and not feel like we've got all the answers. You know what most of the problem is in our culture today? We are so proud, we do not feel like we can listen to what anybody has to say to us. And we're so right that no one can tell us or show us that we're actually wrong. And our voice needs to be heard so much that we never listen to what anybody else has to say, because our voice has to be the voice that's heard. And the only reason why is because I've discovered in my own life for so long I was insecure because I really wasn't content with who Dave Dravecky is. And today, being content has allowed me to listen, has allowed me to keep my opinion to myself except when asked, and has taught me that if I really want to share something with anybody, I first ask for permission to do it. It has been one of the most foreign things in my life, because I'm a guy who likes to be heard. And yet I'm learning that the better way is to listen. Is to listen. I want to thank you all. This has been a wonderful evening for me. It's been a gift to be able to meet some really special people. And before I get off this stage, I want to acknowledge some really amazing people that are here today. I know that you've already met and you know Karen. She's the Gerber gal. And she's got her Gerber babies. And they're really, really cool guys. And if your brother's anything like you, he's just as cool as you are. He really is, David. But there's a man here tonight that I want you to know that after spending 3 days with, I've come to admire and respect so much. And his name is George. And it's Uncle George. And Uncle George has stepped in through the story that he has shared with me and helped me to understand what it means to love well. Because Uncle George knows it's all about love does instead of what love says. He's a guy who puts it into action. And George, I can't thank you enough for God putting you in my life so that I could meet you and get to know somebody really special. Thank you. Robin, I love you like a brother. Diane, I don't know where you're at, but I am so grateful that you're a part of him, because he needs so much help and direction, it's not funny. This guy get lost going to the bathroom. And you guys have been so gracious to us and so loving to our family. We feel like we are a part of yours and you're a part of ours. And I can't thank you for the impact that you have made for how many years? 27? 30 years? Yeah. I can't thank you for the commitment that you have made to these kids and the difference that you have made in their lives. You're another man who understands what love does. And Robin, I know that's not going to stop. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving me the privilege of being able to stand here and share my story with these wonderful people. And I trust that as you move on in your life, you will have a lasting legacy and imprint on all of these people and this high school, so they'll never forget what it means to give, and to give with love. Because that's who you are. Thank you all, and God bless you.